Guys, welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast, Sales Wisdom podcast, because we have both today. We have the CEO of Pointer. His name is Ricky Pearl. We're going to talk about SDR, what it takes to be a great SDR, cold emails, cold calls, tech stack, and everything in between. Ricky, welcome to the pod. Can you introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about Pointer?
Sure. Firstly, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. As you mentioned, I run Pointer Strategy. We're essentially a sales agency helping companies win with using outbound. It's pretty tricky to get that early traction within a startup, and figuring out outbound can be a real drag on the leadership's time when they have sales leadership. And if they don't have sales leadership, it's even more challenging. We help those companies transition that early stage where they don't need to bring someone into their team who can handle the strategy, the management, and the execution of outbound. We just deliver that all as a service.
I first want to talk about your logo. It's quite interesting. The dog, the arrow, and the little move. Who did that, and what are like the multiple significances of that logo?
Sure. So, the main significance is like we've always had Hungarian Whistlers as our dog. So we've got a dog, Earl Pearl. He's actually lying on the couch, like literally right over here. He's my manager, micromanages me. I can't even go to the toilet without him. And so we've always been pointer people, because the Hungarian Whistler is a pointer. And he's very regal. We always stress he's always wearing a bow tie as well. So when we're looking for a company name, we were looking, a whole lot of different things. You're throwing names around. We came around that Pointer Pty Limited was available, and we're like, fuck no, how's that available? Surely someone's taken Pointer. And they hadn't. So the company's name, the registered name is just Pointer. We obviously want Pointer Strategy, which is slightly different, but we just loved the idea. Pointer, firstly, we dog people. We can't work with cat people. But for our dog, Earl Pearl, in his bow tie, but also it's about pointers, right? It's about getting that advice that you need. And pointers also has that significance of like a location, a place, a landing, like a marker. So for all those reasons, we loved the name. And the logo for us was pretty obvious. We needed our mascot, Earl Pearl, in his bow tie.
That's quite funny. I want to talk about your past as well, because you've been founding for the last 15 years of your life. You've had multiple exits. Can you talk about the most memorable / highlight moments of your career so far and all the lessons that you brought with you today?
Sure. I don't necessarily call them exits the same way you'd normally refer to startup exits, right? Because like an exit is a very different thing. Exit to me kind of implies like retirement money, but that's obviously not the case. Any time that you leave with more than you had, I guess, is an exit. So in South Africa, where I grew up, it's a very entrepreneurial place. Essentially, like there's a lot of bad there. There's also a lot of good. But if you want to take advantage of the good, you need money. And so there's a lot of pressure on you to have money. And I think because of that, there's also not a lot of like infrastructure within the government. There's a lot of risk. So people take it into their own hands to control their own destiny, i.e. founding a business. But from the earliest age, I was running businesses. And the first one I opened, I was still at university. My sister's busy getting a degree at Cambridge. She wanted to open laser hair removal clinics. And then she got the scholarship to Cambridge. So she left. So we're like, we'll do it for you. So her partner at the time and I started these laser hair removal clinics. Started with one. We marketed it super hard. And within 3 months, we were breaking even. And, the amount of work that goes into starting a laser hair removal clinic is not too different to starting any business. And I love the fact that it's such an unglamorous kind of business that most people wouldn't really think of. As well, there's a group of people who want this product or service. You have a product or service. And how do you bridge everything in between? So we did laser hair removal clinics. We had cosmetics manufacturing, particularly promotional cosmetics, so like branded lip balms that someone might hand out at a beach, or branded sunscreen. So because of that, we had a printing business because we were doing all the labels, and every label we did had to be custom. So we ended up having all these printing machines, but the printing machines had spare capacity because they were only printing our labels. So we had a printing business on the side. And those were the main businesses set up in South Africa that when I moved to Australia, couldn't come with me. So sold them to my partner, which is technically an exit.
Right. And what about your other exits? Because you had a couple more, for example, Patriot Brands, and then you went to be a CEO at Community Security Group. So tell us about the lessons out of that one. For the record, you were in South Africa at that time. Can you also tell us like why you decided to just move on and your experience from traveling to one country to the other?
Sure. So Patriot Brands was the name of that cosmetic branding and manufacturing business.
Right.
The Community Security Group was a local not-for-profit in Australia where I ran it as the CEO for 5 years. And my lesson is that the similarity between the two is it all comes down to sales. Even as the CEO of a not-for-profit, you're selling the vision, the mission, the purpose, both internally to volunteers and externally to donors. It's all about your ability to sell what you've done. Good products don't sell themselves. Maybe great products do, but I feel like as a founder, that's kind of like luck. Right? You still need to be able to sell your product. Some will just fly off the shelves. It sells quicker than you can even produce, but it's unlikely. Normally it comes down to your ability to sell is one of the key criteria for success. And the reason I left Australia was life. I was out at a bar one night and I met a girl, and that was it. It was by later that night I knew I was moving to Australia because that's where she was from. So that's now my wife, and the reason I moved here. I like to say that I was imported.
So same scenario for me in Mexico, and same scenario for another guy that I interviewed today. So we all share these commonalities. So women move us around kind of, which is interesting in itself. When you were mentioning product and sales, well, yeah, it's kind of 1-2 combo punch. Steve Jobs was a hell of a seller, but also because he was a master at building a vision and having a product be so easily used and so elegant and so simple that that made him it's double punch, like jab and hook or jab and direct.
Of course, you can't sell. You have to be solving a real world problem. It has to be something people want.
Right.
But that's a starting point, right?
Right.
Like if you don't, that's a starting point. You also have to be able to sell it. And even if it's selling it to funders, if you can't sell at some point, your success will be hampered.
Right. It's the laws of persuasion, same in leadership. You need to be able to move your team to convince. And I can remember a quote unquote failure of mine with my nootropic company when we had possibly the best supplement on the market, a nootropic supplement. But I wasn't as good as I thought I would in sales and marketing because we couldn't get in the stores. We couldn't break even on our ads. And we had to shut that one down, take a 40K loss each and move on, and that was quite painful, especially for the ego. So glad that we talk about that. People that have some kind of issue in selling or getting new clients nowadays with the most amazing product, what advice would you give to them in the B2B realm, that is?
So firstly, everyone feels that they have the most amazing product. I've never met a founder that isn't in love with their product and think their product's the one. I think it's about putting it in front of as many people as possible and helping them understand the value. I think the number one advice I give is that it's not about the product, it's about the problem you solve. It's about the outcomes you deliver for the people that use it. And 2, you've just got to have as many of those conversations as possible. You need to create that awareness. Now, there's lots of different ways to create awareness. There's all the different forms of marketing, including outbound. But you need to be able to create that awareness and and have people start those conversations.
So once you have a bigger picture of how to sell your product, your unique selling proposition, the market, how it changes, the competition, and so forth, what would you advise someone that, let's say, has a small B2B business, let's call it a TikTok agency? What would you advise them to actually do technically to get more clients? And you can also talk about the technology you'd use to have them generate leads.
Yeah, I would, it always depends. Every business is different. Depends if you're selling small to medium business, mid-market, enterprise, you have all of these different challenges. But I really think that the two of the greatest forms of marketing that can be achieved by founders in an early stage with minimal budget is social selling on LinkedIn and cold email outbound.
We agree on that. Third, I would say calls, and fourth, all of them together.
Absolutely. It does depend. Like you want to be able to call, and you need to be brave enough to call. If you a small a product, a small ticket item, you're a $39 a month subscription, ultimately calling is never going to be economical for you as a form of marketing or selling. However, to get those early users, those early adopters, to get enough that you're getting feedback from clients as opposed to your CTO and you just guessing it, those first 10 clients, 20 clients are invaluable. They're not worth $39 a month. They're the difference between success or failure. So call as a founder. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I really love the data gathering aspects of calls, and getting the voice and the tones and the emotions to understand more about your clients, and then modifying and developing your product. If we talk about LinkedIn and cold emails, how do you go with your campaigns and actually testing markets and gathering feedback out of these campaigns, analyzing that feedback and modifying campaigns? Because I know a bunch of agency owners, and typically, it's not really scientific how they deploy the campaigns and how they get feedback and how they improve the product. How do you go with that?
Yeah. So I think that's something we excel at as an agency, right? Because it's not just about the $39 a month. It's about finding that market message fits. It's about what's going to resonate and what's repeatable. And so we structure it in such a way. There's so many variables that could go wrong in a campaign, or there's a reason they could not be saying no. Firstly, your email might not even be going to their inbox. It could be going to the spam folder. So you could have the perfect message that if they read it, they would buy it instantly. And you send out 1,000 of these emails, none of them get delivered, and you think, shit, nobody wants this. And now you're back to the drawing board. Now you're changing the product. Now you're changing the message. But the variable was the emails weren't delivered. So you need to be able to control every variable and understand every variable. And it's not that easy. Someone say, well, I'll just want to know if it's being delivered. I'll turn on open tracking. If you turn on open tracking, it decreases deliverability. And at the moment, you're getting systematic open tracking through the servers. So it actually worsens the results and your analytics. So understanding how that works is really key. And I think that's, I almost recommend it's better to work with an agency in the early stage than once you know all of that. But that's beside the point. Yeah, figuring out which variable it is, doing the right campaign testing, the right A/B testing in the right markets at the right volume, constantly tweaking that up to getting higher and higher success, knowing the benchmarks and what you should be getting, like what's good or what's bad. So is a 10% reply rate good or bad? Is 15% good or bad? Does that mean you have the right message? What percentage of that reply is positive or negative? Again, you might think, a 9% reply rate's terrible, and the 33% of those replies are positive. And you might be going to the drawing board to redo messaging. Whereas an expert might be able to say, look, we've done this for 10,000 campaigns, and this is where you sit. This doesn't mean that you don't have a strong market or message. It might mean the message is right, the channel's slightly off. Let's try this messaging in a different way. So yeah, you really need to put it together in a structured way, but still know that doing something is better than doing nothing.
How about interpreting the data as well? The 30% reply rate is 25% out of office. And what kind of replies are these? Are you going for reply-based campaigns or more informational campaigns and longer form campaigns with higher quality of leads? In my book, it's all about the ROI as well. You know, how much are you spending to send these campaigns? If there's no such thing as burning one's reputation, granted that humans forget that who emailed them yesterday, 99% of them with or short-term, with or awfully bad short-term memory. Yeah, ROI is quite the metric there. Do you go with LinkedIn and cold email in one campaign, or do you treat both separately? How do you go with that?
So we typically do some channel validation, and we go about it one of two ways. The vast majority of our clients are coming for us for full omni-channel outbound, where we employ a dedicated BDR for them. It's like we're an expensive service, right? Like we're the 10 grand a month, but you get like a full on. You get your VP of sales, you get your director of business development, and you get your SDR as a package supporting you in succeeding. So when we're going full omni-channel, we will start calling email and LinkedIn and see which of those is performing best for a BDR. We will start firstly trying different sequences, like are we going slow, starting slow and speeding up, starting fast and slowing down. Are we doing all channels independently, or do we point them towards each other so that the call or the voicemail says, hey, I just sent you an email, this was the subject line, no need to call me back, hope to chat to you soon? Or is it similarly, our LinkedIn could say, just try to give you a buzz, would be good to connect here too. So we're pointing everything towards the phone, or we can point everything towards email, or we can run them independently. Over time, we start seeing where we get the highest conversions and what's influencing that conversion, and we shape up the channel. We can alternatively run channels independently, just an email campaign for people who, so when people need a more cost-effective solution, there's no dedicated BDR, we're not calling, then we'll use LinkedIn and email. We'll often run them as independent channels for those that we only have email addresses for, or those that we don't have email addresses for. And separately, we'll try to run them as an omni-channel. We do find with just email and LinkedIn, we haven't seen dramatic change in conversion when running it omni-channel versus running them as two independent channels, but we still always test both.
Right. Normally it's like 1% or 2%. It's kind of the synergistic effect in terms of conversion rate when you combine everything together. I want to ask, it's always been a challenge for me to find great SDRs/BDRs. How do you go with that? Tell us about like the persona. Obviously it varies. Tell us about the psychometric, and tell us how to onboard that person properly so that they can be successful.
Right. This is what my business is founded on. This is incredibly difficult. The role of a BDR is like a unicorn role. You need someone who can talk on the phone, who's a great writer, who understands the nuances of social selling. They know when to push, when to pull, when to go hard, and when to back off. They need to be great with the technology and all the different tools that they need to use. They need to be able to talk to C-level executives and have good business acumen. And this needs to be their first bloody job, because you're paying bottom rates.
Holy shit.
It just doesn't translate. And so you get one of two profiles, either an interesting hire that has a great history and for some reason is willing to take a step backwards into a junior role. They're transitioning into technology sales or something like that. Or someone junior in their career who's looking to climb the ladder, but now you've got retention issues. You're going to train them, get them up it takes you a month to hire them, 2 to 3 months to ramp them until they're at full effectiveness. Then they're going to operate for 3 months. Now they're 7 months in, and already they could earn 20 to 30 grand more in the market, and they leave. And you're not ready to pay more because you're still building some traction. So now you've got the next person. You've got to take a month to hire, 3 months to like ramp them. They operate for 3 months and they leave. Now, like you're a year in, you've got to nowhere. You've been like recruiting like crazy, training someone to do the work, and every time you've just been left with a mess. So we kind of believe that the success lies in that management layer. That the SDRs, you can't put so much value or so much weight of your success in the most junior hire in your team, where there are these known strategical issues, where the retention will be terrible. You need a lot of effort for onboarding and ramping. So our formula is our management layer and our strategic layer is very strong, that the BDR can like step into a role, start performing, and if they step out of the role, everything's retained. Another person could step into the seat and literally they could pick up the phone and they know exactly what needs to be done that day. You know, the tasks are laid out in front of them. We build training and onboarding programs that we can ramp people very quickly. And because we have a team, we also have succession planning internally and support internally, that no campaign goes from 100 to 0. You know, we've had SDRs leave and 2 days later, that campaign's back up and running at the same effectiveness. You can only do that through an agency, of course. But if you're looking to hire yourself, I think you just got to look for interesting reasons to want the job. I really think like anyone can do it, and don't be afraid of unusual backgrounds. You know, someone on the back end of their career, for example, incredibly interesting profile for the SDR role, and you'll get fantastic retention because they're not looking to climb this corporate ladder. Someone who's just moved countries, just wants a job they can do remotely for a year or two whilst they find their feet and they know this is a core skill of theirs. Yes, one day they want to become a VP of sales or a chief revenue officer, but for right now, they need an English speaking job in Japan. Yeah, great. Here's our remote BDR who's going to really thrive in this job, and we're supporting them and they're supporting us. And this is a mutually beneficial relationship. So I look for those kinds of interesting scenarios. And so far, we've had great success with it.
Fascinating. So you'd go up like 80% more on that back end front rather than the young, ambitious guy that wants to try out something for your agency, right?
It does. It depends on where you at as a business. If you're going to need account executives in 8 months, absolutely bring in someone who's looking to climb those ranks. But in 8 months, you just got to know if you don't have an account executive position for them, they'll be looking for that account executive position somewhere else. So when you have account executive roles, and even those account executive roles are churning, or you're adding on new roles constantly because of your growth, for sure, you'll probably be better off retention wise with having someone who is looking for more, because they want AE. You move them to AE or whatever your other departments are, customer success, whatever it might be, then it's an absolute win. If you're not, if you say, hey, I've got a budget of $100,000 for an SDR and all I need is an SDR and the founder's going to be doing the sales, and we're going to be in that position probably for the next 2 years, well, then you're not going to be able to climb with your salary the way the SDR needs. And so you do have to know you will have 3 to 4 SDRs over those 2 years.
Right. I post jobs on LinkedIn. I also do cold outreach to recruit SDRs. I have a bunch of experiments going from sales intern to, like SDRs at Amazon, for example.
Yeah.
So what's hiring platform or recruitment strategy would you use to get in touch with as much candidates as possible to have the broadest selection and make sure to make the best choice there?
So firstly, I think it really depends on country. We've kind of gone on the approach of LinkedIn, right? And the reason is I put a job ad out this week. I put a job ad out at 9 o'clock in the evening in Australia. It was for a role in the US. When I woke up in the morning at 7 o'clock, so that was 9 hours later, I had 210 applicants. Like it is, the market at the moment is unbelievable. Like by the time I closed that 2 days later, I had 400 applicants. And these aren't just 400 where you look at them, you're like, oh, rubbish, 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 rubbish. These were 400 people that you're like, any one of these people could be an SDR. So you really have to try filter out the chaff and the good. And that's the challenge. But at the moment, our challenge, and maybe it's because BDRs want to work at Pointer because they know the training they're going to get. Like maybe there's an element of that. But our challenge is we're getting too many applicants.
Right. I have a quick tip for that one. I only select the ones that actually reached out to me. I don't look at profiles, only the 10-ish out of that 200 that actually reached out to me. That's the basics as an SDR. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely the way to go. So we put in our job ad. and I'll do a few things differently. I say in the job ad, reach out to me. So I've expressly said it there. And you have like qualifying criteria on LinkedIn where you got to
Right.
like tick, like, do I live in this country? One of those is, this is to avoid automatic auto apply. If you're reading this, reach out to Ricky, and they have to tick yes and next, or they're automatically rejected. In the job description, I also have a link to a video platform that they can drop me a video. And I'll say, to fast track your application, here's one way to fast track your application. And I just leave it there at the bottom. Just most people don't even read the job ad. They just see BDR,
Right.
click apply. And so those that don't message me, absolutely rejected. Those that do message me, the ones that also sent the video, top of the pile. And depending on how many sent me a video will even depend if I go to the rest of the list.
Right. That's really good. I know we're on time. Where can people find out more about you, Rick?
Right. www.pointerstrategy.com.au, or hit me up on LinkedIn. I'll always connect. Right? I'm there to network, and I'm there to learn, and I'm there to share some of my outbound knowledge, because I find me posting it on LinkedIn forces me to think about it, as opposed to just going and doing it. And me engaging with people on LinkedIn forces me to learn, because there's so much incredible knowledge out there, and it moves quickly, that it's a great place to stay in contact. So on our website or on LinkedIn, happy to connect with anyone.